and welcome to episode 18 of Her Finance Talk. My name is Sue Diamond and I'm your host. And our goal is to help women create a better relationship with their money so they can live their best life. So thank you for joining us today and investing in your financial well-being. The Her Finance Talk is brought to you by the Her Finance Club, and our mission is to socialize the idea that it's okay for women to talk about money because knowledge is power, and when that knowledge helps you become more independent, it translates to empowerment. Women empowering women is a mantra we love to live by, and one that has helped to inspire women for decades. Where would we be without each other? So ladies, March is Women's History Month, and today is International Women's Day. And the 2022 theme is a world that's diverse, equitable, inclusive, a world where difference is valued and celebrated. So today, we're commemorating these milestones by talking about how women can become more fearless in their ability to accumulate wealth, which will work towards helping us close that gender wage gap. We can all work together to break the bias and create gender equality. So today's topic is women and wealth, becoming fearless. So I want to welcome our guest today, Barbara Best, founding partner and principal of STRAT and founder of STRAT Women's Forum. Barbara, thank you for being here with us today.
Well, Susan, thank you so much for the work that you're doing. I love the theme of helping women be more fearless with their money. And these are conversations that we need to be having more of.
Oh, absolutely. So I'm just going to give a little intro and then I'm going to ask you to expand on it because what I have is very short. So after working in the major financial services firms for 22 years, you shifted gears in 2003, and I'm quoting you, you said it was the best decision, a career decision that you ever made to co-found STRAT, an independent registered investment advisory firm, which is based in the Chicago area. And you offer investment advisory and asset management services to institutions, individuals, and families. But I'm quoting you again that your specific passion is to build a community to support others and help empower women to lead personal, professionally, and financially successful and fulfilling lives. And in 2015, you established the Women's Forum, which is I know it's a dynamic networking group, and I believe you have over 4,000 professional women in it. So we will definitely put that in the show notes so our listeners can go check that out. So again, welcome, Barbara, and I would love for you to kind of share with us how you got into the financial industry, because even today, we know that, when we ask somebody to conjure up, what does a financial advisor look to you? And typically it's a middle-aged male in a suit is what most people envision. So you went into the field very early on. So tell us how you ended up in finance.
So funny. I know I was a liberal arts major and a French minor and econ major, but my summer jobs were working on as a runner on the options exchange here in Chicago, and that environment was so testosterone driven and male oriented that it was a great experience. But I realized this is not the environment I want to work in, but it did expose me to the investment world, and I was really interested in some of the aspects that it really brought to me. So after school, though, I started in a training program. We rotated into different divisions, and because of that experience as a runner, I was able to then to go work into the division of the corporation that was focused on investments. And I really, I started out more doing strategy work, and that really is something that was interesting to me in terms of taking concepts, data, and ideas and linking it to what services the firm wanted to deliver, and then creating an optimal approach to do that. And so, it's funny how you kind of weave your path in your career. You start going down a path and you learn what you don't want to do, and you start to clear it out and get into the direction of where you want to go and where you end up. I've always been a bit of an entrepreneur, even as a young girl, starting a program for kids in our neighborhood to have a play group and making and selling silkscreen t-shirts. So I guess it was my destiny to ultimately start a firm. And the inspiration, though, of that really was, I didn't like the culture I was in. It wasn't a culture friendly to women. It wasn't a culture friendly to women investors. And the opportunity to create our own firm that took a very holistic approach and really focused on legacy, on empowering others to own their voice and power with their money and get connected to what matters and who matters, and then create a path to make that happen. And that's been such a fulfilling opportunity for me, and one that fuels me every day.
Yeah, I think just in terms of finance, most of the people that I meet that are in the industry, it's by default. They typically haven't said, oh, I want to be a wealth advisor or a financial professional. I myself, I have my listeners know this, in an earlier career, had a master's in social work and worked in nonprofits. But I had a huge interest around the behaviors and emotions that come with the money, because we know it's way more than currency, and especially for women. So thank you for sharing that. So I wanted to kind of tap into, as we mentioned earlier to our listeners, it's Women's History Month and International Women's Day. And I think it's really important for us to have conversations around how we can help each other move forward. And we know as women, we have obstacles that are unique to us when it comes to building our wealth. And we know that kind of these gender differences in financial inclusion kind of put us at a further disadvantage, especially in times of crisis. And of course, COVID, which we're still dealing with that. But we know, I think the most obvious one is women are generally paid less than men, and the lack of financial literacy skills and confidence needed to invest in their money. So I find that a lot. And I think it's a cultural thing as well, isn't it, as we're growing? Especially for my generation, I went to school and it's like, oh, girls aren't good at math, so let's not focus on that. So from the get-go, you start to lack confidence because your culture's telling this. And then the social taboo around nobody talking about it, so you don't know any different. You think, oh God, is it only me? But so one of the things that I wanted to kind of maybe have a little discussion, or for you to share with us, how do we start to close this gap on income and building confidence for women in terms when it comes to investing and wealth?
Right. Well, that's a lot to tee up. And I agree with so much of what you said. Now, you have to also take a step back. I think women need to, and realize, being responsible for money is new to us, right? So
Right.
it used to be something that was really taboo. It was crass to talk about money. It's really just smart to talk about money. But if you also realize, we are probably the first or maybe the second generation of women in our families with the ability to cultivate our own financial freedom.
Yeah.
Our my mother initially couldn't have a checking account with my dad's approval and signature. Her mother couldn't own property. This is still new for us. We're still new at being responsible for having access to money and property. It was really the families that we were born into and who we were married off to dictated our financial well-being. Well,
Right.
now we're at the driver's seat, so that's so exciting. It's a little fearful. You mentioned fear before, right? And needing to be more fearless. And I think there's a few different reasons. And I don't know if you're familiar with this research report that I think it was an aging organization, and Merrill Lynch did a report that found out the survey that 61% of women said they'd rather talk about their own death than about money.
Yeah.
And that is, that's again that whole narrative of that fear. And when I talk to a lot of women, and there's a few different reasons I see why we don't talk about money and own our voice and our power when it comes to money. It's, we're afraid it'll create conflict. Sometimes there's women that have shame about past mistakes or what we woulda, shoulda, coulda done better. We got to let go of that. I think what's really important, we have my colleague, Nancy Rizzuto, who's my partner in crime in our women's forum, wonderful friend and partner. We've put together 5 different strategies for cultivating a positive money mindset that we reinforce because, I can educate people about stocks, bonds, mutual funds, but if you have a bad relationship with money and your emotions they can derail, right, your success
Yeah.
with money. And none of the knowledge you have ultimately matters. Sometimes it's really your practices, your process, and your mindset. So, kind of that reframe first from victim to victor. We all have challenges and issues, and we have things that derail us. Can't get stuck in them. We have to
Right.
learn from it so we make our best next decision, right? And
Yeah.
that also leads to focusing on what we can control. There's so many things outside of our control,
Yeah.
and it's just a big waste of time when we don't focus on what we can control. And one of those things, to your point, is dealing with that wage gap. There's some things that are in our system. There's implicit bias that exists in different workplaces, right? So you can choose to leave that work environment.
Right.
But also, a lot of times women don't self-advocate. Susan, I was
Hmm.
at breakfast with a woman who was the head of comp and ben for a major US corporation. And she told me, she was retired at the time, and she told me there were times where she'd be across the table negotiating with a woman executive they were bringing on, and she would want to jump across the table and say, ask for more, ask for more.
Right.
So often we leave things on the table. We need to do a better job advocating for ourselves. That's a way that we can help stem that wage gap. You know, I think we've learned big time from the pandemic that
Mhm.
our systems in place aren't helpful to the responsibilities women take on. I mean, we've been juggling life at home, life at work. A lot of that home responsibility falls on our shoulders. A lot of it is because it's how we define success also. It's important to us to show up in those roles too. But we don't have structures in place within our organizations to help us be successful in that way. And so in some ways, that wage gap happens because we're out of the workforce, helping
Right.
to care. It's that sandwich we get caught in, helping to care for
Yep.
parents or for kids, and we're stuck in the middle. So that certainly is a challenge that we're going to have, but focusing on what we can control, we
Yeah.
can always ask, right? We need to
Yeah.
ask for more. I've had just the pleasure of just helping women ask for more and talking through how to do that and realizing, they can say no, but then if you don't put it out there, there's never the opportunity for them to say yes. So
Right.
the other thing is, what else is important beyond just that base compensation? Is there a way to negotiate different elements of your bonus or equity, right? So
Right.
that's why sometimes title is really important, negotiating a different title so that it helps you be qualified for, long-term incentive comp benefits, as well as helping you maybe be in a better place to get that next job and that next promotion, both in title and finances and responsibility.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just in terms of, I mean, just to go back to what you'd mentioned earlier, I think about in terms of women and the power that they have today, because we've come a long way and we have much more power. But I think about it in the 90s, women still had to get the spouse to co-sign for a business loan. And I'm thinking Friends was on the telly and we still had to have, so it's like, oh my God, So I think about that, but I also think about as we move forward, and we need to become more fearless for a couple of different reasons, right? Not just so we can avoid being the bag lady on the street when it comes to our future financial security, but also the greatest generational transfer of wealth started, I think it was in 2016, and it's forecast to be north of 41 trillion by 2052. And 70% of that is going to belong to women. So whether it be through, the business or the earnings, but women typically inherit twice, just based on the fact that we live a longer life. So not only do we inherit along with our siblings, 4 out of 5 women are going to inherit from their spouse because they're going to outlive them. So being fearless also is, knowing how to manage those monies, because if we can't manage $1,000, we're not going to be able to feel comfortable managing 10,000 or more. But I also, to your point about the negotiating, and I was talking to an MD a couple of months ago, and she'd applied for an administrator's position at a hospital. And I asked her about negotiating. She said, "Oh, I didn't negotiate." She said, "I wanted the job." And I was like, "Oh no." I said, "It's not just for you. It's for everybody that's coming behind you, that we're kind of responsible, because I want my glass ceiling to be my daughter's floor and other young women's floor." So I think, it's helping women understand that, just because it's an increase in salary or it's a position that you really want, you also have to value what your skill set is and what you're worth, and look at, what's on the table for that. So I think, that's really key as well. I mean, although we're getting better at it today, talking more openly about money, but there's still that social taboo, and especially around the baby boomers, I think, because I remember when I first started working in nonprofits and I shared an office, I would never have said, "Oh, how much are they paying you?"
Right. But Susan, the one thing that concerns me in the research I've done is that Gen X and millennials, it's not getting better with having women own their voice and power when it comes to their money. I mean, it is a little more because they're being mentored by women like us. And I think also we're normalizing the need to talk about money. It's not as taboo as it used to be. But in terms of in relationships, we need to make sure that we're not giving up our voice and power when it comes to money. Research shows that women tend to keep more of their money in cash than men. Men have more confidence investing. We get caught up in that perfectionism, right? Even research shows women thinks that they overthink how expert they need to be to invest. And when we feel that way, that creates that inertia, and then we don't invest. And I think almost all of us are really investors, right? We're all involved probably in our 401k or our 403b plans. And so we own those mutual funds, we're investors, and we need to have a mindset for longer term growth. We find that women tend to focus on the day-to-day finances, the budgeting. Men focus on the investments. In a relationship, we have to divide and conquer. There's so much we're all juggling, but we can't give up our seat at the table. We need to stay engaged. I know. I have a sister whose husband said, I invite her to come to the meetings, but, she doesn't come. And I think she does feel a little intimidated, but I've been nudging her to the table. I'm like, I trust your husband implicitly. It's not about trust. You need to be there at the table. It's your, right. And it's your knowledge that's important for you to have, because to your point, we outlive men. We are gonna potentially inherit twice. And women, 9 out of 10 of us at some point in our lives are going to be responsible solely for our finances. And we need to be able to be there and not be surprised by it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, to your point, there's always one person in a relationship that likes to do aspects of it. But again, the other person has to take responsibility for understanding what's happening and where things are. And again, I had a client, and her husband took care of everything. And again, it was that, well, I love my husband and I trust my husband. And I said, well, it's not about loving and trusting. It's about when something happens that he may not be able to manage it, then
Absolutely.
This will fall to you. And I had one client, and she didn't even, everything was on the computer, and she didn't even know the passwords,
right?
And so not only did she deal with the trauma of, going through the loss of her husband, but this was an additional stress and anxiety because her attorney and her CPA had to jump through loopholes because they couldn't access anything, and it took much longer to process. So yes, it's really important, ladies, that know the password to the computer.
One way to help improve your communication with your partner and step in to be more courageous and fearless, and or if you're on your own and managing your money, is creating a financial plan. I think the fear is from uncertainty a lot of times, right? And so a financial plan really it forces you, if you're in a relationship or even if you're on your own, to sit down and pause and say, what kind of life do I want to live? What is my vision of my future self? And with your partner, what do we want to do? It helps create trust and communication and make sure that you're going down the same path together, as well as for yourself to keep you accountable and really stay focused on, what is my life about? What is it that matters to me? So your financial plan marries your life plan to your finances and helps you see, is there a gap between what I'm doing, what I'm saving, and how much my life's going to cost in terms of the life that I want to create for myself? And then you can decide, well, how do I fill that gap if there is one? Do I work longer? Do I save more? Or maybe you're not. There's a woman we work with, she wasn't spending enough, God forbid, so don't deprive yourself, but so just get a handle, create that game plan, and that can really help you just be more confident, create a lot of peace of mind about where you are, where you're going, and your ability to get there. And then, you monitor it, life changes, your goals might change, but you have a plan in place. And that can be your compass and help you when you need to step up and negotiate that new opportunity, that new position, or that new raise, because that's part of your plan.
Yeah. I think it's like you say, it's a roadmap, right? And so it's like, if you're planning to go on vacation and drive somewhere that you've never been before, then you're not just going to get in your car and drive without a map or a GPS. And it's the same thing. We need to know where we're going in order to get there in a timely manner, or to overcome
Efficiently,
any
right?
obstacles along
Right.
the way.
Well, and
The
Susan, I
times-
love that analogy, because more people spend more time planning their vacations than they do their finances, right? So in their
Yeah.
retirement. So we need to do that financial planning. Only what I think it's only less than 1 in 3, less than 30% of people have a formal written plan. You know, it's really important,
Yeah.
and it's
And
not
I
that
think,
hard.
no, it isn't. I like to use the wheel of life to help people with their planning, because for me, when we think about it, so I do, you had mentioned about the money story, money mindset, and that's one of the things that I do. I'm a new money story mentor, as I like to say. And I think, you know, when we think about the wheel of life, so I think about like your money story is an important entry point when you think about a new narrative, because it affects and influences so many aspects of our lives. So if we can modify our money story, then we will have made powerful changes in our life story as well. So the wheel of life for me, in terms of helping clients, is about, you know, because many women, we think and feel differently about money, and money is a tool. It's a tool for us to achieve what's most important to us. So looking at your wheel of life and determining, you know, what's important to you, and then tying those values into your financial plan and your goals, makes it easier to follow, right? Because then you can think about what's motivating you to move there, rather than, oh, I think I need like $1 million to retire. Well, what, where did that number come from? You know,
Oh, I
what
know
are
the
you
myths
looking
around
for?
those numbers. Yeah. Well, and it helps you be accountable, right?
Yeah.
It also helps you weather certain storms. When there's a big plunge in the market, or there's a lot of volatility, that can create uncertainty about, oh my God, what's this doing to my money? And then I know people that have sold a lot of their investments because they're afraid of what's going to happen based on what's happening in our country or around the globe. And you can never time the market. That fear-based decision, research shows that over 90% of your portfolio performance is based on your asset allocation, not on market timing, not on picking the hot stock. And you can't time the market, and you can really get in trouble when you try to make, and you don't want to make those fear-based decisions. So a financial plan,
Right.
it stress tests in bad markets, so you're able to see, okay, I'm still on track. I'm still on track. You know, it can like walk you off the ledge, if you know, instead of getting anxious about things.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you said earlier. We have to focus on what we can control.
Yes.
Not what we can't control. So if you have the plan in place and you know it's weathered and you have your emergency fund, then you can relax and not worry about that, right? As opposed to, I think every time, especially during COVID, before I transitioned away from my financial planning team, you know, it was like, oh my God, you know, I need to sell. And my response is always, well, it's kind of like going into the store and everything's on sale. You know, what's the best time to buy? It's when, you know, it's cheap. You sell now, you'll never recoup that. But if you think about buying, then you're buying at a much cheaper rate than you've been buying just recently. And then people will be like, oh yeah, I never really thought about it that way. So it's sale time.
You know, Susan, I also think that the other metaphor I like is the idea of dancing with fear, of not, you know, when we let fear overwhelm us, we push against it, and it creates a more powerful force, and it makes fear even stronger. But when we push through that fear and we move with it, it's so powerful when we get to the other side of it, right?
Yeah.
And I think in addition to that plan, along the way is when we need to be intentional and build that self-awareness.
Yeah.
My colleague tells such a great story of, getting a flyer for this great clothing sale. And so, putting it on your calendar, and then she shows up and tries on all these clothes. And she finally just paused, said, I don't need any of these things. You know, I have all these clothes in my closet at home. She just walked out of the dressing room and left. And I was so proud of her for telling me that story, because I would have bought the things and I would have returned them because I would have had that regret for doing that. So always staying more aware, is this a want or a need? And realizing that this purchase isn't going to fill some void in my life, right? That it might be something else that, if you really pause and reflect, that is missing, but it's not having that fabulous new handbag that's going to change your life and make you happier, right?
Yeah.
So just making sure, not again depriving ourselves, but just being more aware of when we're buying things or making certain choices. Is this something that will bring you joy? Have at it. But just, we have to make sure we have our eye on the prize also, so that we can have that financial freedom ultimately to make the choices that we want to make, because that's, at the end of the day, is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. I like to share a little tip, because it's not actually the purchase that gets your endorphins going. It's the thought of that. So I I tell clients, I said, so okay, because especially during stress, there's this emotional shopping that occurs. So I'm like, well, you can do the shopping. So the beautiful thing about the internet is you can have a cart. So I said, and you can put things in the cart, and that's when your endorphins are at the highest. But I said, don't buy, go back a day later and then ask yourself, do you still want this? And it goes back to the need and the want. And, if you still, if this is something that's important and you think it ties into what, your values and your goals are, then go for it. But if it, 9 out of 10 will probably find, they got the high when they put it in the cart.
That's interesting.
If they buy it, then they get what I like to refer as, Jude said, like the shopper's remorse. It's like,
Totally.
oh, what did I buy that for? I don't need
Right.
that. So I said, it can be a win-win. Go for it. Go shopping. Put it in the cart. Just don't buy it. Wait, a day, and then go back and look and see. Is this something that's gonna make your life better?
I'll have to share that one with others. Thank you.
So I can't believe we're at our time, but I wanted to ask you to share with our listeners what you do to help women.
Sure. Well, I am always open for conversations with women to talk to them about how they can live a more fulfilled and empowered life, personally, professionally, and financially. And we have our women's forum. We have a wonderful website, capstratwomensforum.com. And we have our upcoming programming now that, we have virtual program that we offer. So people call in and Zoom in from all over the country, and actually beyond the US borders. We have people from Europe and North America and South America, but we have really solid programming about finances, but also about your mindset, about just having fulfillment in life, all different aspects of facing fear, of creating more resilience. Wonderful programs, and we have the recordings of those programs also out on our website. So there's great content, and there's a wonderful community. There's other women to meet. We always have networking segments on our Zoom sessions. So I invite anyone to get on our mailing list and be a part of our community. We'd love to have you connected to us.
Okay. And so they can find you at your website, and
Yeah, the capture@womensforum.com website. And then in terms of how I help women, we help women and couples with their finances. As you mentioned, we work with families and individuals as an advisor and as an investment manager, really to put together, frame out their life plan and their financial plan and help create that optimal path to make that happen, to help them live their life and legacy goals, and just to build a very trusting and transparent relationship. And then we work with institutions, and so women that are involved in leadership and organizations, we help organizations manage different pools of assets and do so as we do all of our work as a fiduciary. So we're legally always acting in people's best interests. That's another wonderful element of our business model. So I'm also here to have a conversation to help any women on boards or in leadership talk about how we can help them manage their organization's money in a more effective way and how we can advise them as well.
Okay, well, that's great. And I will also put where our listeners can find you, the links in the show notes. So thank you, Barbara, for sharing your story and your expertise. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show today. And I think if anything, one thing that our listeners can go away with is be intentional, right? When it comes to your finances and your future financial security. So again, I want to take this time to remind everyone that the Her Finance Tour is brought to you by the Her Finance Club. And our goal is to inspire 1 million women to start the money conversation, whether it be with your spouse, your friends, or your colleagues. Because again, knowledge is power. And when that knowledge helps you become more independent, then it translates to empowerment. So also, Barbara mentioned her forum for women. So that's a great resource for our ladies. I also encourage you, if you're not a part of the private community on Facebook, the Her Finance Club, that you can join that, and the link will be in the show notes. And thank you again to our listeners for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us. And don't forget to subscribe, because we love hearing from our listeners. So please feel free to share your comments. Until our next episode, here's to your financial well-being. Take care, everybody.